Hello, Caner Universe, and welcome to all those new to the cane culture, to the channel. If you like what you see, don't forget to subscribe. That way you don't miss anything. One of the more common questions that we get, and this one is by request, is what is a good quote-unquote first move with the cane? What's your top move? What do you do first? You know, the ACSD system, and I get the nature of the question, but we are more about the principles, the strategy, than trying to fit in something a very specific in a technique mode where you throw a shot, and that's a okay model, but we tend to be more about the tactical responses under the stress of that moment when the adrenaline is pumping. So let's start off from the premise you always hear me say, and the understanding that your cane is an impact tool, therefore it seeks bone and not fleshy areas. And certainly not with the number one contact point, which is that shaft. And if we go from there, we're going to be fine. So I'm going to give you about 4 anatomical targeting areas, and then specifically probably about 8 striking areas. So each one of those anatomical targeting sites, there's at least 2 ways, because we have 206 bones in the body, right? So I'm going to ask if you could just tilt this camera a little bit here up for me, and let's start off the other way, please. Yeah, there you go. And so this assailant is coming in, and the first thing, so that you know, well, what's the first move? The first move is really to water this whole thing down and get out of here. And that's where your verbal skills and your ability mentally to say, hey, I don't want to put myself in this spot. Notice that when I'm talking, my cane is already, I happen to have it in a standard grip, and so I'm here because I know that I might have to spring into action. This is called choking up, right? I've covered this in other segments before. And so I'm having this conversation, and unfortunately, he decides to make that move. And so that limb, that attacking limb, is a great first target. And so when he responds with a shot, your first one is this limb here, the arms, and it's not enough to say, I'm going to strike in the arm. There's a particular way that we do this. By the way, all my strikes are in what we call a Powershot template. It's a 5-strike Powershot template. I've referenced it in other areas, so I'm just going to comment onto the sites. The arm is braced by 2 bones laterally in anatomical site, which in anatomical position, which is with the hands up. This right here on the thumb side would be the radius, and you have the ulna on the pinky side. So when he's coming with a push, with a whatever it is that he's coming down, right to the outside, notice that I'm very precise in striking that ulnar bone. It's a great first move. Talk about first moves. Knocking that down is a first move. It never is, however, in the template, rarely is it only going to be that one first move. Why? Various reasons. Number one, if you've done any training before and you've gotten hit with the cane, very specific, or even with any other tool, impact tool, boom, you get hit. There is a pause there before all of a sudden, whoa, that's when you feel the pain, the incapacitation. There's a slight pause. He's jacked up on adrenaline. It may not be this, even though you're crushing. This is a bone crusher. You came down with a heart. You're probably going to need a follow-up shot. So that's one side, is that ulnar bone. If I'm to the inside, let's assume maybe he's coming in with a knife, right? So he's coming in with a weapon. He's coming in here, boom, and you're striking. That top of the forearm, it's on the thumb side. That's where you're the radius. So if I'm here, back off, down, boom, you're hitting up here, right? A third on the limb here could be the hand. Now keep in mind, the smaller the target, the more difficult it is to strike. So I could go try to finesse this thing and tap here. No. I'm going to, boom, take the whole thing out. See, when he turns there, maybe even the elbows chip. Right, so that's what you're targeting here. It's too precise to try and go with the hand. The hand would be a great shot, right? Closer to the inside, boom, closer to that thumb, absolutely. So if you're getting the the carpals there, that would be fantastic. So you have 2 to 3 shots just on that limb alone. The second anatomical site is when you're moving up. Now we're looking at the AC joint there on the shoulder, and you say, Joe, that's such a small area, and the clavicle, right? But they make great secondary targets. What do I mean by that? He's coming in, and I'm moving in as well to go ahead and do that. He can go ahead and turn that hand and stop this. Turn the hand, boom, put it here. You can't just go and get the clavicle because he has 2 hands and he puts up 2 hands, and this is a situation, right? Because he can see it, he's not a zombie. We're always going to assume that he's younger, stronger, faster. So he's not going to let you do that for free. But as a second shot, if he comes in here, boom, I do this. Look at the exposure, and all you're aiming for is this frontal area in here. If I move in there, there's a pretty good shot the force will take on that AC joint. If you've ever had a separation there, and I have, not even going into a fracture, that limb is not good anymore. The clavicle fractures with 7 to 12 pounds of pressure. You can wield a power shot to that area. So if I'm moving in here, and I get an opportunity to come back up and come through this area and strike the clavicle, phenomenal. You're going to be able to get that a whole heck of a lot better off of a number 2 shot. So something like he's coming with a shot, boom, I knock this, and you're coming right over. The clavicle leaves itself more exposed. So it's the general bony area of the clavicle and the AC joint as a secondary spot. The third one that I'm going to give you is actually my number 1 go-to. And that is the lower body. It's very difficult, I would say downright impossible to prevent getting, for your opponent getting struck there, because you're dealing with them up here and then that initial sidestep. I love taking out the wheels. If you take out the wheels, you cannot chase me. And that can, in essence, right, whether it's primary, see, because he's throwing, I'm always moving, by the way. And I should have prefaced that. My initial strikes are also defensive in the sense that I'm not there. My center, I'm always moving. It's never, oh, no. He moves the out, so do I, boom. That's your first strike. It may or may not be enough to incapacitate so that you can get to a safe place. But now, with that anatomical targeting, you can see it makes as well for a secondary. I love it for my primary, but secondary shot, boom, there you just hit the ulnar bone. Now you're taking that out. Now when he's hunched over, you're going over that shoulder area, looking, even if you hit here, which is fleshy, the force of the strike does this to the shoulder, right, which impinges. What you're trying to do, folks, is you're trying to incapacitate. In the limbs, you have a secondary area as well, which would be the knee. So if I'm a little higher on it, that works as well. You're taking out the medial aspect of the knee, right? So you're affecting medial collateral ligaments, cruciate. You're affecting everything with that kind of blow. And the last one, obviously, right, which is that pink elephant in the room. Why don't you just strike the head? Well, folks, only you can make the decision as to whether that threat, your life, that threat is serious enough to do that. I always remind you that you live in a society governed by laws. I always remind everyone that I've never said, and I am not an attorney, so don't take this as legal advice either. And that is that you're trying to incapacitate. A headshot can be fatal, and you know this, People always want to say, go for the head. It's a serious, somebody comes at me, go for the head, as if this were like automatic. And again, I'll remind you that he's not, right? He's not a mannequin. This guy can move. As an initial first shot, he will put his hands up. He will try to grab that from you. He will, power shot or no power shot, he's here, and you go to lift, close in on me, and now you're stuck there. So not a good first shot generally. Secondary shot, absolutely, yeah. If you need to, he's coming in with a knife again, and you had to do this because a lot of times it's not the first one, and you had to do this, you had to do it. There's a variety of ways of striking the head, but think about that, right? Part of your training is having that cognitive, because you're going to have to make decisions. And here's the deal. You need to make those decisions under the stress and duress of the moment when your adrenaline interferes with your ability to make those decisions. Let me give you one situation where it may very well be warranted to use that as a first shot. And that is, folks, when you're in some type of active shooter situation, or they're addressing, right, the attack, the assault is towards a loved one. He's turned around, move in, and you find yourself in this situation. You're coming from a place of cover and concealment. Maybe he's pointing, maybe he's holding, maybe he's doing something, and the only way you can do it is this way. In this sense, it is very similar to what law enforcement does when they find themselves in this type of scenario where somebody's being held and they get an opportunity. Here's why. Turn around. It's very similar to a firearm in the sense that I can't be back here, fire, and afford to miss a shot, and which allows him then to turn around, right? I called attention to himself, and now you have this. You will find that law enforcement in a situation like this, they will come up from here. It's the shot that they cannot miss. And for you, it's the same thing, because the last thing that you want is to be over here. He hears steps coming, right? And here you go, right? So this may be a situation where that one shot, which turns off, disconnects the computer, the rest of the body has to follow, and that may be warranted. Again, I'm not giving you legal advice. I'm telling you the reality of how it works with this tool. Folks, you're watching this. If the messaging, you've been watching video now for a while, and you're trying to learn, maybe from video, maybe you are brand new. There's so many coming every day discovering the power of the tool. But maybe also you are an instructor. You have a message to communicate to your audience, but you don't have that curriculum, especially during these times. How does it work? Wherever you're watching, all over the world, we're training attainers from all over the world. And there's a way to do it safely, effectively, efficiently from the comfort of your home or wherever you are. And it all begins, before you go to the website, we appreciate all your interest and everything, but please, let's have a conversation first to make sure that that is the best fit for you from the onset. And all you need to do is text the letters CCC for Kane Clarity Call. The ACSD team will schedule you in less than 24 hours. We'll schedule you, we'll have a conversation, we'll have a sit down, and you'll actually have a written plan. You will know what you need to do first, what you do second, where you are in the timeline of your training, so that you don't waste any time or funds with missionless training that's not going to get you exactly where you want to go. It's an important topic, and you and your family are certainly worth it. Thank you always for your time and attention. Keep caning and stay safe.